that pushing the envelope forward does mean like thinking creatively, thinking differently, not accepting things and then seeing forward to do. So it's reflect on experience and put together stories that show how you have thought that way, or if you haven't yet, start thinking that way. Start thinking about how you can improve things drastically, whether in your personal projects or other companies. And then you put that into your resume, and then you have a story to tell of how you both stand in, stand out, and fit in. And that is my talk. So I'm happy to open it up for questions at this time.
Or ask, I guess there's a question in the chat box by Ashish Binath. Sir, what do you feel are necessary skill sets that you think is going to govern the post-COVID years in terms of big tech companies?
Great question. So I think the most important things are communication and COVID, like at Microsoft, but it makes it so that it's slightly more awkward to get the call started, to get communication going, but you just have to kind of be willing to continue taking action. And if you have a quick question, there's no longer what we call hallway chats where you can just pop into someone's office and be like, hey, do you have a sec? I have a question. Instead, it's like, message someone kind of as like your own project manager saying like, hey, I have a question. Do you mind if we hop on a call real quick? Because the person-to-person chat is always going to drive messages faster, or more efficiently rather. And then the second piece is problem solving. I think no matter what company you're at, whether Microsoft or another, or even a different industry, problem solving is what is valued more than almost anything else. I didn't say this at the beginning. I guess this whole time I haven't even told you what role I'm in at Microsoft, but I do what's called mechanical sourcing. And that means that I help source the physical parts that appear in our devices, like the Xbox, the Surface Laptop, Surface Pro, that sort of thing. I work with the suppliers who make the parts that go into our hardware devices. And the reason I mention that is because I didn't have any background in that. It was a completely new thing for me. The suppliers and so I had to be willing to learn and to problem solve. And the reason I mention that is because I didn't have any background in that. It was be open to learning, open to talking to people, and so I had to be willing to the data and then taking action because of it. And then looking at problems with vague boundaries, or maybe no boundaries at all, and just solving a problem. Those are going to be the most important, I think, moving forward. If you do have any other questions, yeah, definitely.
Okay. So I have observed this with myself as well as with some of my friends. So basically, we can identify some of the opportunities which are in front of us, and we know that we may be able to do it if we put in a little bit of more effort into it. But what do we say? There's a barrier of fear in front of us, and like we'll be keeping on thinking whether we'll be able to do that or not, and finally we will be ending up losing that opportunity. So how can we overcome that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, like the background that you gave to the question?
So basically, we are not able to overcome the fear of, what do we say, utilizing the opportunity which is in front of us. Like we'll be doubtful whether we'll be able to do that or something like that. So there's this particular fear which actually keeps us, what do we say, not taking any steps further, and finally we'll be losing that opportunity. So
yeah,
can we overcome that?
Right, good question.
Fear.
Things get back to this idea of imposter syndrome, how we have these doubts because we believe either you can't do something, you shouldn't, you're not good enough, or it's not your time. And I think that one of the most important things for overcoming that is simply to your position to you. Like if you talk to your fellow students at your college, I guarantee you that everyone around you is going through similar things. So I think it's just important to have that sort of an open dialogue, because it's really easy to feel alone, or that you're the only one going through the problems and hurdles that you are. But I've found in every point of my life, whenever I talk about whatever struggles I'm going through in this moment, like even now at Microsoft, if I talk with the other people who are in their first couple of years at Microsoft, we share similar struggles. And so by going and feeling like you have a community around you that is going through similar stuff, it makes it easier to start pushing through. And then in terms of how you actually push through, I think one of the things to remember is the idea that stress is kind of self-inflicted. And what I mean by that is that if you have this worry about, how am I going to be able to take action, or am I going to be able to move to the next step of anything, realize that that is a worry that you have created for yourself. It's very normal. We all do it, but it is something that is self-created. It doesn't exist in reality. I know it's kind of like a deep concept, but if you can think about what actions you can take and think about the things that you can do today, tomorrow, and the next day, those are the things that are fully in your control. You can't change the past. You can't do anything about worries that you have right now, but you can take action. And whatever the things are that you want to better yourself in, identify little daily things that you can do, habits that will get you closer to whatever those goals are. Let me know if that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
Hi. First of all, thank you for the talk. It was very insightful and motivating. I also graduated from USA, W.T. Woodson High School, Virginia. My question to you is, like working in a top-notch company like Microsoft, how do you maintain your work-life balance?
Great question. This is something that I think pretty much any tech company can have struggles with to a degree. One thing that I was told within my first week is that hypothetically, there is probably work that you could do at every hour of the day. There's never going to be like a deficit of work to do, meaning like you're never going to be like seeking out work. You're just going to have probably more than you can handle. And the way in which you balance that is individualized. And what I mean is that people have different priorities at different times of their life. So, for example, if you are a new parent, you now have a child to take care of, that person has obviously a major priority outside of work. And it's completely okay, scale back and devote slightly less time to work. For me, I run my own business outside of Microsoft. And so I make sure that I have time to do that in addition to my role at Microsoft. So what I've essentially done is I give myself a cutoff time where like once, the day goes on and it hits that time, almost no matter what, I simply stop myself and I say, you know what, I can pick this back up tomorrow. There's no shame in doing that. And that's exactly what I do. The exception would be, sometimes you will have like major deliverables that require, today is the deadline. And obviously you might have to work a little bit longer to get it done because it's due today. But other things that are, more long-term projects, I think it's important to have a cutoff time of sorts, because otherwise you never stop working. And that's not the goal of being in a job you're passionate about. I think the goal is to learn how to be efficient with the time that you have, and then just pick back up the next day.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Sure.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, sir. This was a nice motivational talk.
Thank you.
Do you have any strategies on developing a growth mindset?
Yeah. So one thing that I do personally is what I call daily personal development. And what that means is that every single day I try and learn one new thing. I mentioned briefly just now that I run, and my business is fitness coaching. So I help people achieve their fitness goals through custom workout programs and meal plans. And that's something that I've been doing for several years. I'm confident in my clients are able to get great results, but I don't accept that I know everything. I know that I don't. And so I make sure to learn one new thing every single day. And so for me, that just means like kind of delving into the science behind various fitness and nutrition topics, just one topic per day, and learning about it for 10, 20, 30 minutes, whatever it ends up being in a given day. And so For a growth mindset in the tech industry, same concept. Like if there are certain topics within tech that you are passionate about, whether you feel like you're already strong but you want to get even stronger, or you feel like there are development areas where you just want to improve because you feel like you're weaker in that area, if you learn one new thing every single day, that can compound into a massive gain in knowledge and ability to succeed. So I think that's one big way to learn a growth mindset. And the other thing would just be to start with how you think about problems and how you react when things are not easy. And what I mean by this is that it's very easy for, problems to come your way, whether, life problems or work problems, and you can kind of get frustrated, like, because things are just hard, things are difficult. So if you notice yourself getting frustrated about those things, try and like actively be aware of that, and then ask yourself, like, how could I make this experience easier for myself? And I think one of the easiest ways to do that is to have that growth mindset. A growth mindset also means that you don't feel that you have to know everything. In a growth mindset, you can learn things from those around you. So when you encounter that frustrating thing I just described, maybe the answer is just go ask someone else, like, hey, have you encountered a problem like this before? Would you mind like telling me a bit about how you solved it, or how you would solve it if you were in my position? So those are kind of the two biggest ways I could think of.
Thank you.
Arif Mohammed is asking a question in the chat box. What are your thoughts on whiteboard interviews with DSA questions? Are they relevant in the day-to-day job?
Sorry, what does DSA stand for?
Arif,
Data
could
structures and
you?
algorithms, sir.
Sorry, what is it?
Data structures and algorithms.
Gotcha. So in my role, I didn't have to do any whiteboard questions because I'm in a mechanical engineering role. But the one thing I can say across the board at Microsoft is that the purpose of a whiteboard interview is to see how you interact with another person in the room. Because if you think about it, you are interviewing for a team, and that team wants to make sure that they can work well with you. And so that whiteboard interview isn't meant to simply be like a fully independent thing where you're isolated from the interviewer. It's the sort of thing where you're going through the problem and you have to make sure you understand the scope of the problem. And that way, that person who is in the interview room with you, doing the whiteboard interview with you, knows like how you think, how you ask questions, if you're considering all the parameters. And in that way, it is definitely relevant to day-to-day work because you will be operating in a team environment. So that's my answer there.
Faizan Ahmad is interested in knowing if you're planning to get back to Ninja Warrior anytime soon.
Yeah, thanks for asking about it. Definitely do. I recently moved from Seattle to Texas, where I'm originally from. And we have a lot of Ninja Warrior gyms here. So I've been back training for that and definitely hope to be on it again next year. That's my goal.
Okay, so Sajin Shaji is asking, life of mechanical engineer in Microsoft, what is it like?
Yeah, so in my role, I'm a mechanical sourcing engineer, which, as I mentioned, it's like I own the supplier relationships with suppliers who make the parts in our physical devices. So my role is mechanical engineering in nature, but I'm not the one per se doing the engineering. But I do interact with mechanical engineers on a daily basis. And so mechanical engineers tend to do things with, designing parts. So whether like the categories that I own are called shields and magnets. Magnets are what they sound like, they stick stuff together with magnetic attraction. Shields are basically like metal coverings for printed circuit boards. And so I work with engineers who design those parts to accomplish, various functions within our devices. And then I work with our suppliers who make those parts. So, I might be negotiating price, basically like getting Microsoft the best deal while maintaining a strategic partnership with those suppliers. If we were in a post-COVID era where we could travel, I would be in China between 2 and 4 times a year. That way I could visit factories and, see the production in person. But then I also make sure that we have what's called continuity of supply, making sure that our suppliers are able to produce parts in the right volumes and at the right time and deliver them on time at the right quality. And then we also have compliance, making sure that the suppliers we work with are all following all of the regulations we have across social and environmental rules, ethics, that sort of thing. And yeah, so it's a pretty cool role, and it has a lot of facets to it.
And now Manuel Benny asks a question. He's asking, sometimes we are forced to join courses which our parents are interested in rather than us. So after graduation, when we get into an interview round, how do we convince the interviewer that we are good enough?
Great question. So I think that what this gets to is that school is not the only indicator of whether you are a good fit for a company. So completely understand, your parents want you to join some courses that they think you should do, but realize that there are so many opportunities that you can have to take on things outside of school, whether it be personal projects, whether it be internships or other jobs before a bigger company job that you might be working towards. All of those are ways in which you can, kind of show the interviewer that you have gone above and beyond to do things that aren't just what your parents, made you do. But the other thing is that this isn't applicable to every single role, but realize that even in the courses that you did take that, maybe aren't a direct fit, there are going to be carryover things. I want to be the skills necessary in this post-COVID era, and I said communication and problem solving. And so if you can work on those two things, no matter what area you're in, and you can showcase that in an interview, that's what's going to matter more than anything. Like the fact that I have talked about fitness and Ninja Warrior in all my interviews, again, is to stand out, but it also allows me to showcase other ways that I've gone through, creative problem solving in my life that definitely are not related to the tech industry, but they do show that I know how to problem solve and that I take action to get toward solutions. I see a couple other questions in the chat. Do you want me to go through those?
Sure, you can go through those.
Cool. So I see one that says, are there any books that had an impact on you? Any suggestions? So directly from Microsoft, I'll definitely say again, Hit Refresh by Satya Nadella. I read that on my plane ride to Seattle before my interview, and that really prepped me to know what the culture is like. So that's a great one. Another one is called The Compound Effect, and The Compound Effect kind of gets into what I was talking about earlier, how what you do each and every day adds up to, whether or not you get to that big goal that you have for yourself. And that's exactly what the compound effect is. So that's a really cool one. There's another book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and it's a fascinating book about how people become the very best at what they do. He was the one who coined the 10,000 hour rule in his book, about basically saying if you hit 10,000 hours of work in a particular area, you become an absolute expert in that. And then he talks about various ways in which people have accumulated advantages over time, but then also gives you some pretty practical takeaways of how you can stand out. And then I am actually writing a book that will hopefully be out next year. So be on the lookout for that, but those are my recommendations. Okay, there was another question that said your intern experience at Boeing. So Boeing is a very different company than Microsoft for sure. I definitely learned a heck of a lot, and I'm very grateful for the experience that I had because in large part it helped me get my job at Microsoft, but it wasn't the best fit for me in large part because at least when I was there, it definitely felt like they had more of a fixed mindset than a growth mindset. It was the sort of thing where within my team, things were kind of accepted as the way they are. And that's a really difficult position to be in because it's the kind of thing where even if I have this idea, it's going to be difficult for it to become reality because if it's not in line with the way things have been, then changes aren't really going to occur. And a large part of that is because it's a government regulated industry, the airline industry, aerospace. So they don't have as much flexibility or leeway as something like Microsoft in the tech industry. So Yeah, it's just it's a lot different, and I'm definitely grateful to have moved on from there. So I see another question that says, hustlers are not encouraged by the society generally. What's your take on that? If you could, can you expound upon what that means? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that question. If you're still in the call.
Am I audible?
Hi, yes, I can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. It was a very inspiring session indeed. What I mean by hustlers is actually like the go-getters or the people who just go after every opportunity available without just thinking about how the end result will turn out are generally called as hustlers. I have heard a lot about this concept. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, good question. So I think that the first thing that I would say is that to me, I'm at a point where it doesn't necessarily matter to me what society is encouraging or not. It's more so about like what it is that I am going for myself, how I can achieve that. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. I mean it in a way that is kind of like it's the nature of working towards your goals. Like at some point you have to be at least a little bit selfish about like, okay, what is it that I want to achieve and how is it that I get there? And for me, that has occurred by, like going after my goals. One thing that I talk about in the book that I'm writing is my definition of success. And I define it as happiness, fulfillment, and health while helping others. And so if achieving those four things means that I'm a hustler or a go-getter, I'm completely okay with that. Other people may have different definitions of success, but in my mind, those are the things that matter. It isn't necessarily about like money or being viewed as mainstream or cool. It's just like happiness, fulfillment, health while helping others. And I definitely have done that by going after absolutely every opportunity I can that means something to me. And another kind of shameless plug here, I gave a TED Talk that's kind of gets into that topic. So if you search Patrick Lyons TED Talk on YouTube, you can watch that and learn a little bit more.
Hi, sir.
Hello.
I would like to ask what motivates you every day? Like motivation is required, right? So for the tedious training and the training for American Ninja Warrior and also at Microsoft. So what actually motivates you every day to push yourself harder?
Great question. So this is another concept that I talk about in the book that I'm writing. And I'll actually take a step back before answering it and kind of relate it to a story I told earlier about this idea of resistance. I think the reason why we lose motivation is specifically because of resistance. It's like when we have those moments where we either feel tired or we don't feel like putting in the work or we feel like we're not good enough or we're not getting anywhere, all of those things are demotivating thoughts. And one of the keys, I think, to being successful is learning how to overcome resistance. And the way in which you do that, to me, is through habits. And the reason I say this is because think about any habit that you have in your life right now, something that you will never waver on because it's so ingrained in your life. Think about the fact that because that habit is so ingrained in your life, it doesn't matter if you're motivated or not, you're going to do it anyways because it is so ingrained in your life. Like the easiest example is brushing your teeth. I don't know about you guys, I brush my teeth twice a day, every single day. And that's not something that's ever really gonna change for me. It doesn't matter if I'm tired, it doesn't matter how much I have going, I'm gonna brush my teeth twice. And so if you think about that in the way of American Ninja Warrior or Microsoft or get it working towards a job, you need to find ways to institute habits into your life that will accomplish the exact same feeling of like certainty that you're going to do something. And so that's the way that I've done pretty much everything. And that's actually the topic of my book is habits. It's this idea that the practices you institute daily are what add up to the most ever waver on them because you have a defined, frequency and cadence to what you're doing. So I gave the example of personal development earlier about how that's how I practice a growth mindset. And that's another thing that it's like, I've been doing personal development every single day since January 1st of 2019. So it's over 600 days in a row that I've practiced daily personal development. It's so ingrained in me that my day wouldn't feel right if I didn't do it. And so in terms of like how you find motivation and how you get toward your goals, I think it's less about finding motivation and more about instituting a habit so that you don't need motivation to put in the work each day. So that's my answer.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
We have another question in the chat box by Manuel Benny. He asks, how should we deal with a boss in our initial days if he is bullying or harassing us? Do we obey him or go against him till we have experience?
So that's a tough one. So one thing that this gets into is that your manager can, in a way, make or break your experience. And the reason I definitely say in a way is because ultimately, like, you do kind of get to define what your experience is like. Like, yes, it can be unfortunate to have a boss who you don't have the best relationship with. I think that what's important to do is, one, like, get the work done that you need to get done so that you maintain your job, you can maintain your livelihood, that sort of thing. But know that, like, you have the opportunity outside of those interactions with your boss to try and like shape and change other things. Maybe that's in the way that you start looking for another job, so that you can get out of that spot. At Microsoft, one thing that you could do is you could look for other roles within the company that you could potentially switch to, so that you can maybe find a different manager who you have a better fit with. Obviously, that's not a super ideal thing, but it can happen. There are so many people out there. You're not going to get along with absolutely everyone. But at the same time, it is important to get work experience. Ideally, that would be in an environment in which you feel comfortable. But yes, getting experience is important for continuing to progress through a corporate company or startup, anything like that. All right. Another question that I see is what are the problems you face in Microsoft and how do you overcome it? So the problems that I face in Microsoft are just general problem-solving moments where it's like maybe I'm deciding between two different suppliers for like who should I award business to on a particular program, or I'm trying to figure out how to save Microsoft the most money. And I have a bunch of different strategic options and I have to consider them. But in terms of how to overcome the problems that I face, it does come down to like talking about these things with my fellow teammates, as well as talking with my manager and talking with mentors on other teams. It really is a people first company. And that goes a long way. And I think that if you can use the people around you to help you overcome your problems, obviously put in the work to make sure you understand the problem in its full scope. But at that point, you can totally ask other people what they think about what you are thinking. Another question is, how did you start doing YouTube? Good question. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I am a YouTuber. I've been making YouTube videos for about 3.5 years. And I really do give performing because I have a background in theater, and so I love being in front of a camera if I can be. But I started doing it just because I had done what are called Facebook Live videos, where every week for a year I got in front of a camera, talked to my friends on Facebook in a live video about fitness and nutrition topics. And some of my viewers encouraged me to make a YouTube channel to take the quality up a notch. And then I just started connecting with other people who did YouTube. And again, I instituted that instead of daily habit, I instituted a weekly habit of making a new video every single week. And that's ultimately what helped me become a better storyteller for Ninja Warrior as well. And then I've just kind of continued that over time. Okay, I'm looking through the other questions. I know we only have about 7 minutes left. I do have a hard stop at my 10:30 a.m. time. I can't remember what time it is for you guys. I think it'll be 9 p.m. But yeah, I have a couple more minutes.
Yes. So can we have 2 more quick questions?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Let's see. Another one is, what were the difficulties that you faced during your interview and how did you manage to tackle it? Great question. I actually meant to touch a little bit more on this earlier. So sometimes in interviews, especially at like high level companies, they will have what I would call like a pressure question. And that means that it's something that can feel like it kind of came out of nowhere. And they really just want to see how you react under pressure. It's this idea that you can fight, flight, or freeze in moments of pressure. And they want to see that you fight through it, that you fight through the pressure and that you have an answer. It's totally okay in moments of pressure to say, like, do you mind if I take that? Because then that shows that you're not just rushing into it. You are, taking time to really consider what was just asked. It's not that you have to, produce an answer immediately. But in the moments of pressure, it's important to still stay level-headed and confident. But again, in any interview situation, it's a conversation. You can ask clarifying questions. You can kind of like tell them how you're thinking about it and then ultimately use that to get to an answer. So that's my general recommendation. But another thing is just to be prepared for the interview in advance. So one way is to study up on the culture. So if it's Microsoft, read Hit Refresh by Satya Nadella. And then you can also use websites out there like Glassdoor where you can basically get a good idea of what interview questions could be asked. That helped me a lot because what I did is I would just look at the questions on Glassdoor and give a practice answer for like, okay, here's how I would answer this question. And then that way, especially if that question is in the interview, you're already confident enough to answer it.
Sorry to interrupt, but I guess it's time for us to wind up the program. And to thank Sir and everybody who's here, I'd like to invite Arya to give the feedback and the vote of thanks.
Sorry, was there a question for me or are you closing out?
No, we are inviting another person to talk. She'll be here soon.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, thank you guys for taking the time to listen to me talk. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can just add me. My name is Patrick Lyons, Lyons. Pretty much any social media platform that you are on, you're welcome to connect with me. Literally happy to connect on Facebook, on it. It's so cool. There's so many of you. I love it. But yeah, hopefully you take some golden nuggets away from what I have to say. Genuinely take these things to heart. These are the things that really worked for me, and I'm excited to see you all continue to grow in your passions, your careers, all of that. And like I said, feel free to connect with me, ask any other questions that you have.
So I guess our next speaker is having a microphone issue, but when we invited you to this talk, we knew we were all going to get inspired. But after the talk, I guess we are not just inspired, we are also really educated about how to get into a job. So I really, really thank you from the student branch IEDC of Mar Basilios College of Engineering and Technology. And thank you so much for giving us your valuable time. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, guys. That really means a lot. I'm glad you got some good stuff out of it. And hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Thanks for giving me a piece of your time.
Yes, thank you, sir. By the way, we'll be waiting for your book too.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I'll definitely be posting about it once it's ready to go.
Thank you, sir.
With that, can we wind up? Thank you all and have a very good day.
Thank you. Bye.